Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to the Harpin On Rugby podcast. Joining me this week is someone back for cap number 48. He's the author of the multi-sports blog Post to Post Sport, and more recently has begun hosting his own show on Dublin South FM. Welcome back to Mr. Kieran Duffy.
Yeah, nice to be called up for the summer tour, Jeff. The sports magazine on Dublin South FM, Wednesdays 7 till 8. You can get a 93.9 FM around South Dublin or Dublin South FM.ie, anywhere else. So covering general sport, but there's always plenty of rugby, and Rugby Keno has been on a few times. So there's a nice little crossover at Harpin On Rugby as well.
Yeah, I hope to get on myself at some stage soon. And of course we do our own little slot on Fridays on the same Dublin South channel. So there's a lot of Harpin representative. But best of luck going forward with the new show. You've done it for a few weeks now. It's going okay, yeah.
Yeah, enjoying it. Really enjoying it. I mean, radio was radio's a bit different to podcasting, but there's a lot of similarities as well. And still trying to keep up post to post sports. You can read rugby bullets on posttopost.sport.com, but at posttopost.sport.blog. You think I know by now? It's only been 7 years, but I'm really enjoying it, and it's a really nice station, and I appreciate people tuning in, and you can get in touch with me on Post to Post Sport if you have any questions, comments. I regularly put it out there on Blue Sky or Instagram if anyone wants to get in touch, talk anything rugby, and I think it's safe to say there's plenty of rugby to talk about this week.
Absolutely, yeah, and let's do that. Let's turn our attention to our feature match of the week. Here's a generic 80-word summary of how things went. Ireland launched their Nations Championship with a dramatic 33-31 comeback win over Australia in Sydney, trailing 24-12 near half-time after defensive lapses. Jemison Gibson Park's try revived them before Hugo Keenan's bonus point score edged Ireland ahead. The Wallabies struck back for 31-26, but missed kicks proved costly. With Australia down to 14, Thomas Clarkson powered over and Sam Prendergast coolly converted for the lead. Ben Donaldson's last play penalty drifted wide, sealing Ireland's great escape. Now, obviously, we're going to go into a little bit more detail than that, but to start things up, Kieran, now we never thought this match was going to be easy by any means, but it has to be said, those first half Wallaby tries were scored a lot more easy than we'd have liked.
Yeah, I think particularly the first two, Australia kind of breezed through the Irish defence, and as much as I don't like to be overly critical with an away win in Australia, I think we've kind of maybe gotten a bit carried away with how successful this Irish men's team are, and we've kind of come to expect wins. But at the same time, there are a few issues in terms of defence, and I found the first two tries actually Peaches and Campbell's. Neither of them converted, which ended up being crucial to the win in the end. But they were both scored in the same corner. It was the same kind of story. Ireland just too narrow, and Australia spread the ball out really easily. You notice as well, there were a lot of occasions where, players seem to be on different pages in terms of what they were doing defensively. Like players would shoot out of the line. We were too bunched up. I found kind of everyone was in the same place, and then you could see, particularly for Peach's try in the first half, there was so much space out wide. Gibson Park tried to get over to cover in the end, but he couldn't get anywhere near close. And Ringrose shot out of line a few times. In fairness, we kept hitting back in terms of attack, and we stayed in the game. And there was a half, and I know we'll talk a bit more about that later on. But it was kind of a frustrating half defensively, and you'd wonder kind of whose responsibility is it? Is it someone on the pitch needs to say, look, we're all bunched up here, we're all too close, spread out, guys, you go over there, you go over there, or is that just something players have to kind of know from training? But particularly first two tries, as I said, they were scored in the same corner, and everyone needs to spread out more, everyone was too bunched up. Third try, too many players shooting out of the line. Hugo Keenan made a fantastic tackle, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but he was one player I did think defended well, but Ireland were quickly offside from after that, and then Australia fairly easily got over. And then the fourth try, well, how many times have we seen it happen to Leinster this season, intercept tries? It was far too easy. Again, intercept, Jorgensen makes a big break, McCluskey nearly gets to him, but he manages to offload to Lonergan, and there's no one anywhere near him. He manages to get in pretty quickly. I feel like second half was better. I mean, I suppose Australia got 4 tries in the first half and only the one in the second half. But again, I think part of the issue was our scrum was kind of getting beat up. Now, part of that is, we've talked about it for both Leinster and Ireland being down so many loose heads this season. We're down to Tom O'Toole and Jeremy Loughman, who, in fairness, have done their job well, but it's just there's a difference in quality if you're on your third or fourth choice loose head than your first or second. So the first try, the second half for Australia, the only try, the second half, I should say, their fifth try overall, did a scrum near the Irish line, and it was just another scrum penalty, and we had a few of those, and they took advantage of this one. McDermott tap and go off a penalty, and just no one could stop him. I mean, no one could get anywhere close to him. And in fairness, I think that was kind of the story of the first half. Just when Australia were attacking, it kind of always looked like they were going to score, and I think we didn't help ourselves, and part of that is down to Australia being attacking very well. I think we've kind of seen. I think we've seen them improve over the last while, but part of that as well is Ireland just defending far too narrowly, shooting up out of the line, players on different pages, and it's something that definitely has to be addressed by the time the New Zealand game comes around, and even I think it's something that'll cause us problems next week against Japan.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was a lot of, obviously, to concede of so many tries in the first half is very concerning. It seemed to me that maybe our issue wasn't it wasn't even so much a deficiency in the way we're playing, but it was more of a predictability in the way we're playing. I mean, we all know Joe's CV. We know what he was like when he was with Leinster and Ireland. I think the classic example is that I think it was the Amlin Cup final against Stade Francais, where basically we heard afterwards that he basically told the lads, "Listen, you run these plays, you will score tries." He basically laid it out that way, and that's exactly what happened, especially in the first half. He's really good at preparing teams specifically for the opposition that he's playing, and it's like I'm not even so sure. Is it a case of that our shooters did what they did at the wrong time? But I think that him and his team were able to almost anticipate the times at which they were going to shoot, because Australia were like ready for the gaps that they were created. You know what I mean? It seemed to me like they were prepared for what our defense was going to do, and that was something we needed to work on. And you talk about preparation. I mean, it was the same kind of thing when the intercept try with Sam. Now we know he's had those issues before. We've seen him throw intercept tries for Leinster, and there's been problems there before. But still, it speaks to that predictability, where you know that if you stand in this kind of channel at this particular time, that there's you have a chance to go for an intercept. You know, it's a risk reward kind of thing that Joe Schmidt's always done. And then of course you talk about a set piece. We did have issues in the scrum. That fifth try was literally after we just changed our front row. It was I think it was the first scrum after our front row had changed, and there was a tap and go, a quick tap, take McDermott on the ball to over. That wasn't so much. But when you talk about set piece issues, I think our lineout was really struggling from start to finish. And again, I think that speaks to preparation and going after our. If you go after our lineout and you study our lineout and the kind of options we tend to go for, we were really struggling. They seemed to know exactly where our lineouts were going. They were ready, and we were maybe a bit off with our darts as well. That Dan Sheehan, he's taken over the captaincy. He's got a lot of responsibilities as hooker. He's got to learn to put them all together into the same package if he's going to be a great captain. But the darts, they were either being overthrown or they were being picked off. Or each time we were getting into scoring position, we knew. What we were doing well was if we were getting into the 22, once we won the ball, if we had the ball, chances are we would score and get it or create a scoring opportunity. But when you win a penalty in midfield and you're in the 22, we were getting tense whether or not we win the lineout. So that was an issue that needs to be fixed. But I did get the impression that the problems that were found in the first half were kind of, not totally fixed. We still lost a couple of lineouts, but for the most part, those problems were solved after halftime.
Yeah, it was dramatically improved, I thought, and this basically, as I said, 4 tries to 1 in terms of Australia in terms of first half to second half. I think, in fairness, Ireland were just more kind of coherent in their play in the second half. and better defensively. But there was an issue late. I thought Bunty Aki was poor to concede the penalty where he did. And now you could argue that conceding the penalty there actually benefited us because it was such a difficult kick. And it ultimately went wide. So that might have been the win in the game rather than conceding one in a better position. So he probably claimed that was his idea the whole time. But yeah, he shot up, went for the ball when he shouldn't have. So yeah, I think predictability has kind of been an issue for both Leinster and Ireland this season. In terms of Ireland, I suppose it's kind of like for so long things have worked for Ireland, things have been good. So I guess maybe it's a case of that kind of tactical complacency of saying, well, we always do this and it goes well, so just keep doing this. But other teams have kind of figured it out now. I think other teams have just kind of more figured out even since the last World Cup. It was an issue in 2019. Yeah, I did feel like the issues were kind of fixed more in the second half. Yeah, it was a line out. It's been a constant issue for us. I'm not really sure what the problem is. But again, it seems like there's a problem with the calls. It seems like there's a problem with players going at the wrong time. And I think part of it as well is, look, like it or not, we are in a transition phase. And I know it seems like we've been talking about this transition phase for a very long time. We are missing some key players. I think Tommy O'Brien's one of our best defenders. He's out. Caelan Doris is a leader in the team. He's out. I think Jack Crowley would be starting at 10 if he was fit. And as I said, we're down 3 loose heads. And Balakune has proved to be good in defence for Ireland. And he's out. So I think, part of that is you're missing so many key players. But I agree on the predictability. It's kind of a case of if everyone knows what we're going to do, we don't have the ability to change it up. We don't have the ability, I suppose, to know that the other team knows what we're going to do. Then people on the pitch need to be able to make those calls and say, right, look, this isn't working, bury things up, and it's something Ireland have maybe struggled with over the past while. But I think all in all, there are fixable issues, and they were largely fixed in the second half. So there's things to work on for Japan and for New Zealand, but at the same time, we'll talk about it later. It's you're still getting an away win against Australia. People will talk about, well, Australia missed a few kicks, and it's like, yeah, but crucially, Ireland didn't miss too many kicks. So I think it's minor things, but I agree. There's been times that Ireland have just been too easy to read. Like everyone knows what we're going to do at times. So it's been a big issue, but I think. I think they are fixable issues, but I'd like to see that bit more coherency in defence next week against Japan.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always the same for these June and July tests. You've got two different sort of rugby seasons going head to head. I mean, these Australians, they've been playing Super Rugby just since February. They had a couple of months off before that. But the Northern Hemisphere teams have been playing since way back last September. It's a long attritional season. And for a lot of these teams, a lot of these players were Leinster players in that URC final as well. 2 weeks later to go halfway around the world and to play a big game against Australia. I think looking into this and previous results, it was easy to overestimate Ireland's chances and underestimate the Wallabies. And I think the fact that it was a lot closer. Now the bookies didn't. The bookies had it very tight. I think it was 1 point prediction either way. But that sort of showed up in the final score. But no, I think it was heartening, as as concerning as it was for the first half. But the fact that we're able to fix those issues and go forward in the second half and sort of dominate the second half, I think we did just about did enough to deserve the win. But listen, it's always good to have work-ons as well. And my God, we're going to need to work on them if we're going to be playing the All Blacks in Eden Park for sure. Well, elsewhere in the Nations Championship, Ireland's next opponents, Japan, produced a composed 27-10 win over Italy, controlling territory and striking clinically through their midfield to pull clear after a tight first half. New Zealand edged France 34-32 in a thriller, the All Blacks surviving a late French surge after dominating early phases and finishing their chances out wide. Wales overpowered Fiji 39-24, their kicking game and discipline proving decisive. And South Africa's 45-21 victory over England was built on brutal gain-line dominance and relentless second-half surge. Scotland closed the round with a 47-38 shootout over Argentina, capitalizing on turnovers in a frantic contest. These results leave Ireland in third place on points difference in the Northern Conference of the Nations Championship behind Scotland and early leaders Wales, who also both have maximum points. But now we must return to Sydney. And while we led with the negatives for the bulk of the first half, there were, of course, a load of positives as well, given the result. And there's no greater starting point than that player of the match, Mr. Hugo Keenan.
Yeah, look, he's been a superstar, and I think he was one of the players of the match in the URC final as well. And what we saw from Keenan, like obviously there was the ankle tap in the first half. That's just one of those huge individual moments. That's not something you can coach. That's not something you can't tactically plan for that. That like, look, you're gonna do a big tackle at this time. That's just something players have to have in them. But what we saw as well is, I think one of Keenan's strengths, he's so good defensively, but I think sometimes in attack we forget how good he is at moving the ball, how good he is at making a break, making an extra yard, and then playing a pass. Again, in the URC final, we saw it. We saw it in his setting up Reiko Ione's try. I think Keenan in general, he's a player we probably have to be able to play without at times because he's so injury prone. And yeah, he's not a particularly old player relative to the squad. I wouldn't say, but he's a player. It's probably a big step down to either Frawley and Osborne or Jimmy O'Brien, and that's no disrespect to them. It's just Hugo Keenan's one of the key players in this team, and you can see how much better we are when he plays. There was a moment there, for his try that I thought he just ran a absolutely super line. It was the fourth try. So early in the first half, Ireland needed to get a good and early score. Ireland were going through the phases, got up to the line. It was a simple short pass from Ringrose, really good offload there. I thought he had a mixed game, but that was a really good moment. And then Keenan just in the right place. He's such a powerful runner as well. I realize how good he is at running those lines and how good he is at kind of finishing off moves. But for all his defensive quality, I think we sometimes underrate him in terms of attack. But that was a really good moment that put Ireland ahead. Obviously, Australia hit back. I thought, look, he was just 80 minutes. He was just a superstar for the whole game. I think Keenan's one. If he wasn't so injury prone, he'd probably get a lot more credit for what he does. Maybe he's kind of a player that we're kind of used to. Maybe it's kind of that, because we were reliant on Rob Kearney for so long, even though it is quite a while ago now. He probably never quite got the credit he deserves, but I think it's one we have to have a good backup for because he does get injuries, but at the same time, there's no replacing him. He's not a player we can replace. I mean, defensively, he's very strong. He makes those last-ditch tackles. I have no problem with him being the last line of defence, and attacking, his ability to run lines, make an extra meter before throwing a pass, and just be overall very creative. I actually think him, alongside any of the trio of Tommy O'Brien, Balakuna, and Hansen, makes for a really good attacking line, just in terms of kind of having that spark in attack, but also in terms of reading the play defensively. I think that makes for a really good back line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in the Virgin Media studio, they had Rob Kearney, and remember the Rob Kearney era for Leinster and Ireland, when he was like literally one of the first names in the team sheet in every game, Mr. Reliable at fullback. And he was like one of those players where you're like, well, how the hell are you going to replace him? Who's going to come up and be as, assume that mantle? And I think the amazing thing about Hugo's career is that he was playing that way almost from the start, from the minute he started. For both, he came out of the sevens program, but then when he took to 15s, he took to that 15 jersey and he just made it his own. And you literally wouldn't. And he's so good as well as coming back from injury. You say he's injury prone, but when he comes back, he's instantly playing at those levels. And it's like we take it for granted. I was almost concerned at the end of the game that because it was an Australian broadcast, that he does his stuff he's a kind of an unassuming player and does his stuff brilliantly, but that they may not even pick him as player of the match. But I suppose, given the Lions tour and everything from last year, I say the Australian broadcast know his name all too well at this stage. So he did deservedly get it. And we'll talk a bit later about that sequence at the end of the first half, which was key to the game. But that tackle that you mentioned, the Suari seemed clear to be, if not scoring a try, but to be setting it up. He not only ran him down, but he knew how to tackle him. That's an extra key as well. It's not enough to just catch the player. You've got to assess the situation, and whether it's to grab him or to go from high or to go from, and he knew to get him low and just to get him down, and just to prevent what seemed like a certain try, and that ended up like a 14-point swing just from that tackle because we went on to score that try. It was just an amazing performance, and it's not the last time, it's not the last player of the match award you'll get either. But let's talk a bit more about Australia's side of things. I think we've spoken a lot about ours, and it was, and we said in the first half how we think that Joe Schmidt had them prepared, but they had a lot of good individual performers as well on the day, and they really did give themselves a good chance of winning this.
Yeah, they did, and I think they actually attacked really well. And it's kind of the inverse from what Ireland were going through in the last stages of the Joe Smith era. I think Ireland were tired, they were exhausted, they were maybe a little bit overcoached at that stage, and maybe that's because Smith was with Ireland longer than with Australia. But this Australia team kind of seems to be leaving Australia in a really good place at the moment. I mentioned Ireland's shortcoming for the Australia tries, but they were also really well worked as well. I thought getting the ball out really fast, really good handling. Lonergan's try, I think that was the intercept with the offload. I think that was really good, just really skillful offload. And in fairness, if Australia get a couple of those conversions, they probably do win the game. They probably suffered a little bit from the first two tries being near the touchline, maybe, I think, because they were difficult conversions. But yeah, really good hands for the first two tries, I thought, getting the ball out wide, because that's something that, again, Ireland maybe struggle with, just spotting the space, because oftentimes we're kind of going through the phases, we're banging on the door, and there's so much space out wide, and we're not seeing that. And again, that ties into predictability. Australia very quickly saw Peach for the first try, Campbell for the second try, saw they were out there. Third try was more route one, just banging on the door, going up front. So all their tries were kind of a little bit different. I was impressed with McDermott when he came on at full half, at scrum half as well. Just in terms of, I think he's a very busy player. I think he's nearly in the same way Jameson Gibson Park is a hard one to catch. I think he was very much the same, and he was in fairness, he took his try well. And I think overall, in fairness, Australia, like the winning try came in the 77th minute when Australia were down a man. Then there was the disallowed try beforehand. That was a contentious one. I think, in fairness, it was probably letter of the law correct, but maybe a bit of an overly harsh interpretation of the law. Dan Sheehan's disallowed try, but it took basically the whole of the second half, a good half an hour for Ireland to get over with Thomas Clarkson's try, and then Prendergast crucially lands a conversion, but that was when they were down to 14. I think they held out well because Ireland were very much on the attack at that stage in the game. Probably lost the game more down to Ireland. Ireland character is what we'll talk about a little bit later. But no, I think they moved the ball around really well, and I think it's not a given that in a year's time, when the World Cup's in Australia, that they're going to come second in their pool behind New Zealand. I think they can. I think that's something they'll be targeting, because look, they're both going to be Chile and Hong Kong in their World Cup pool. I think something Australia are going to be targeting is that game against New Zealand. Everything's going to revolve around that. Even these summer games, they play. They have a few games coming up. They're probably not so much going to be focused on the results there, but rather just building towards that home World Cup. Because for a while we were looking at 2027 being in Australia and thinking, are they going to struggle? Are they going to be any good as a host nation by then? Is rugby going to have suffered by then? But I think they're starting to turn things around. And I thought, you could argue they were a little bit unlucky to lose the game in the end. It was one of those that could have gone either way. So look, I think plenty of positives for Australia, and they played well overall, both in defence and attack. And I thought their attack was scintillating at times, and they're going to be a hard team to stop scoring tries.
Yeah, but I mean, because despite the fact that we were missing a lot of key players, myself and Hugo, when we did the preview show, we seemed to, when you stacked the two 15s up against each other, it did seem that we kind of it looked like we had the edge at most positions. But I think but I think a lot of players like just they came through on the day, and like I say, Joe Schmidt had them prepped to such a way that you play to the system and you'll reap the rewards, and they did. They believed in him and they believed in what he wanted to do, and there were great. There was great finishes from Peach. The first try was really good, and Lonergan played well before he had to go off. But I think a key moment for them was it was actually just before that Sheehan try that was chalked off when Carter Gordon limped off. And I got the impression that maybe he would have played the full 80 minutes. I'm not sure if Joe Schmidt has full faith in Ben Donaldson as a number 10. That's just from things I'm hearing around the Australia squad. And I think that showed itself as well when Bunty gave away that penalty, and it was a penalty kick over to the right-hand side. Now, Donaldson had already missed a conversion from that same kind of area, but still, to have Harry Wilson, the skipper, walk over to him and say, I think he said something like, "Do you believe in yourself, mate? Or do you believe you can get him?" I'm paraphrasing him. But just that question alone to me suggests he doesn't believe in him. Do you know what I mean? I think that question alone put the doubt in his mind. It was a lot of pressure as it was. You know what I mean? I just thought it was an amazing question to give. Like it was and the ref was right there. That's why we heard it on the ref mic. But overall, anyway, it was a good performance from Australia. They were unlucky not to win. I still think we just about did enough deserve to win. I think we got more out of our bench to be able to bring on the likes of Nick Timoney, but Ty Byrne especially. There was a lot of we had some strong names to bring off the bench, but I think Australia can feel good about themselves going forward. It's a sixth defeat in a row to Ireland. It's not great, but I still do think they're on an upward curve. So we'll see how they get on. But we'll go back to Ireland's side of the ledger now anyway. And you wanted to look at one more maybe slightly negative aspect about our squad. I mentioned Ty Byrne there, and I think him coming on was key to our, sort of turning things around and sort of getting a hold of the game and getting back into the lead in the second half. But also have Gibson Park. The one sub we didn't use off our bench was Craig Casey. And it does look like a situation where if a game is tight, then Gibson Park has to play the full 80 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's the case for Ireland, really. And you look at Tyburn and James Gibson Park, it's not a negative on those players specifically. It's a negative in terms of the step down afterwards, because I think, if you take either of them off the pitch, Ireland are significantly not as good. I think Tyburn is, he's just so good at the breakdown in terms of turnovers. He terrorized Leinster earlier in the season in Croke Park, and he's just got all around the pitch. He's such a busy forward. He can make a good carry, and I think he just brings it up a level. And I would worry that if he's not around, because we have to keep in mind James Gibson Park and Ty Byrne, they'll be 35 from the World Cup. I don't think either of them will be past it. I don't think either of them are going to be not as good. It's just a case of, I'm 31, my body's different to when I was 25. It's going to be different again when I'm 35. That's the reality of human bodies, that like when they won't be able to play as many minutes. They won't be able to play every minute of the game. They won't be able to play every match. You could argue that they'll be rested in the two easier pool games in the World Cup, but that means they're still going to have to play a lot of rugby. So I think we need that contingency in the background for when they're not around, because how many times are we going to be able to have Byrne and Gibson Park save us when, there's much more of their career behind them than in front of them. I think Byrne, it's good to see Prendergast. I think he played well at 6. I'd like to see him start the next 2 tests there. I'd argue he should start there just for that exposure in those minutes. That's not a case of dropping Byrne. It's just a case of saying, look, we need to have a look at other players. Gibson Park, it's a concern. Yeah, I'd argue both Casey and Doak should be in the squad next week, because I think, again, we need that contingency plan. We need them both to get used to playing with, whether it's Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley, Kieran Frawley, Harry Byrne. We need them to get used to playing in the Ireland system, the Ireland way. you could make the argument that if Jack Crowley was fit, Craig Casey may be more suitable, just from familiarity for playing with him at Munster. I think Nathan Doak's a good kicking scrum half. I think he's nearly a second fly half on the pitch, and he's a good playmaker. But I'd look at it as those two need to be bedded in. Keane Prendergast needs to keep starting. I think generally speaking, we've addressed some issues around the pitch in terms of particularly at number 7. For so long, it was a case of relying on Josh van der Fleer. I think Nick Timoney's come on there. He's not a young player, but between him and Van der Fleer, at least you have two players in that position. I'd like to see Bryn Ward get a bit of time at 7 as well. I think we have Caelan Doris and Jack Conan at 8. I think 6 is just that issue where you need to give Prendergast that bit more time. Obviously, sometimes Byrne plays at lock, sometimes he plays at 6. I prefer him at 6. I think he's good anywhere he plays. But yeah, I just argue that we're very reliant on two aging players, and it'd be fine if they were 27, 28, but it's an issue because they're getting on in years and they're not going to be around forever.
It's fair to say that, like, with the exception of probably New Zealand, France, and South Africa, it's very difficult for a test setup to sort of try to rely on 3 or 4 world-class options at every position. I think Ireland has done a good job, managing the provinces and managing player time and everything and stuff, and bringing people through up the academy, and to develop the players we have. But there's, I guess it's kind of inevitable that there's always going to be kind of maybe 1 or 2 positions, and I think there's no question that scrum half, with all due respect, when it comes to Leinster, to the likes of Fintan Gunn and Cormac Foley and those who are options there, and for the Ireland setup, Craig Casey and Doak, it's just like you say, the difference in quality up to Gibson Park is immense, because Gibson Park is a world class scrum half. France have about 3 of them at the moment, but we have 1 at the moment. And the question is, we had to keep Gibson Park on for this game. I see why we did. I'm assuming maybe next week Craig Casey will be starting, to get some game time. It'd be interesting to see who's on the bench with him. If they put Gibson Park in, they think, well, we might need to bring him on towards the end, or if they just rest Gibson Park altogether, with the All Blacks in mind the following week. So that'll be an interesting decision. With regards to Tadhg Beirne, I do think we do have we have better options at the moment. I think, if is it Chukwu, they think that he could be a possibility, because Beirne fills those 2 roles. He's that 5-6 option, which is important. Keane Prendergast can do a bit of that as well. He's coming into the team. They've no trouble starting him. Hopefully they'll be able to progress. And just the fact alone, they've played Tadhg Beirne so much. Just the fact that they left him on the bench at all for this game was something of was a surprise. That I raised an eyebrow at that. And he's played incredible amounts of rugby over the past few years, including the Lions and everything. He's almost undroppable. So it's good to see that we can have the confidence to do that. But it is true that those are areas we're going to have to look at. Okay, so we want to end on a positive here, and I think the key element of this game, I think, was that sequence at the end of the first half, where we said we talked about Hugo Keenan making that amazing tackle. But what ended up was Australia got the ball back, and they were running the ball through the hands, and our defense started to be a little bit better. We kind of forced them into quick passes, and the key element here was the winger knocked the ball into touch. I think it was Jorgensen out in that wing. I could be wrong, but he knocked the ball into touch forwards, which meant that we had the option of line out and scrum. Now, of course, all day long, I'm shouting from the couch, the other side of the world, scrum, take the scrum. And they did. But what we're also saying is, win the scrum. It's on your own 22. Win the scrum and just kick the damn thing off the pitch. And they didn't. They started playing on. Of course, I'm going, geez, what the hell are they doing? We'd already thrown an intercept in that half. But I think what they did was they knew that Australia were expecting us to kick off the pitch, and they didn't expect to have to be defending. And that was a really brave decision that paid off.
Yeah, I think it absolutely did. And we talked about predictability earlier. This wasn't predictable at all. I was the same, thinking, look, just kick it out, just get into the change room. But in the end, this was the winning of the game. Really, two late tries in either half were the winning of the game. Um, I thought as we got up the pitch, James Ryan made a big break. He made a few meters. And then just the passes furlong to Ringrose to Conan to Gibson Park who read in. And again, we talked about Gibson Park. He's just so good at his vision is just amazing. He sees everything on the pitch. You know, it almost seems like he sees things before it kind of happens. And you know, if he's not as well as Ireland played, if he's not there to finish it off, Ireland probably don't score that try. He ran a really good line and get over. And, I think the thing is, Ireland backed themselves. We talk about character in this Irish team, and for so long we've look like a couple of years ago. This would have been a heroic defeat. I think, like back in the 2000s, probably it would have been. But for so long, Ireland were kind of played above themselves, and because their first half wasn't particularly good from Ireland, but to put themselves in a position where they're less than a score behind, and then to instantly be able to get back into things get back ahead in the first half, in the second half, in the early stage of the second half, that was crucial because, yeah, I look at that move at the end of the first half, and it was just a team move. It was a team try. I mean, Gibson Park's on the score sheet, but everyone scored that try really, and it was composed at the breakdown. No stupid stuff. No silly penalties to give away because that would have been really deflating if Ireland had played on, turned over the ball, Australia kick it out. That would have nearly been like conceding a score. But ultimately, Ireland got the win. I think I think the winning try as well. You know, obviously, from a line out, Ireland had an advantage and another advantage. Because Ireland had the advantage, Prendergast played a big pass to Frawley, and it was a bit of a messy breakdown. Go back to the penalty. We're taking a chance if you have the advantage, I think. But Australia were warned. We went back for the penalty. Go again, another penalty. Australia are down to 14, and this was the big chance here. I think it was about 76, 77 minutes in, and it was another tap and go. It would have been easy to. Yeah, I think the tap and go was brave. I think it was a case of saying, look, we back ourselves here. Thomas Clarkson, who I think has had a fantastic season, he got over the line. I'd actually say that by the time the World Cup comes around, he'll probably be our starting tight head, regardless of if Furlong or Beelum are fit. But he got over the line, and then the conversion. We talk about Donaldson not believing in himself. Sam Prendergast did believe in himself. Definitely, he got that conversion. But those are the big moments of character at either side of half time and late in the second half. And that's the kind of thing this Irish team has, just that belief, that character that, look, we probably should lose this game, but we're going to drag it out. We're going to grind it out and win. Bit of a concern maybe over Loosehead again, that Lockman and O'Toole both seem to pick up knocks in the game. Obviously, O'Toole had to come on after Lockman came off. I think Lockman's been really good for Ireland. It'd be a shame if he was missing. But again, we kind of have that attitude of, look, whoever's playing, wherever they have to go, wherever they have to fit in, they're going to play well, they're going to do their job. And it's been a trait of any successful Ireland team, that kind of grit, that kind of character. Whereas there was a time where Ireland were great at heroic losses, I think now we're great at heroic wins, and I think that was on show. And to have that in Australia a year before the World Cup in Australia and narrowly grind out a win, that's what we'll need. I mean, because regardless of how well Ireland do in the pool stage, you'd expect us to beat Uruguay and Portugal. If we get the win against Scotland, we'll finish top. We'll probably be playing someone like Georgia in the knockout rounds. There's a potential other final against the likes of Argentina. Those are the games that matter. Those knockout games, not letting things slip for those knockout games, winning a first ever knockout game in either a men's or a women's World Cup. That's when the questions will be asked. It's good to see that Ireland have this character, this composure, this, look, we need to do something here. We need to earn the win. And I think, yeah, that was the winning of the game. And it goes back to that tap and go, really. It goes back to the Hugo Keenan tackle, really, but it goes back to that tap and go, with that decision to say, look, we're gonna play on here and we're gonna back ourselves. And if it all goes wrong, then it's a stupid call, and that's the risk you take. If it all goes wrong, it's a case that it's going to be very much criticised. But no, a really good moment. That even though Ireland were still behind after that try, that was probably the winning of the game at the end of the first half, just to get those 7 points, because as you said earlier, it was a 14-point swing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, self-belief, I think, is probably the theme there. I mean, we talked about Joe Schmidt's influence on the Australian side to get them ready. I think, if you have to also talk about Andy Farrell, the way he has Ireland believing they can win a series in New Zealand, they can win a Grand Slam, they can win in France, all the things that they've done since he's been in charge. And, even though the first half wasn't going their way, just to have the self-belief to go for that drive up the field. And like you say, everyone was involved in that score. Now I could hear Australian fans in the background saying maybe one or two of the passes were flat. And we were saying it ourselves, but they all cleared the TMO. So I don't know, but just the fact, that trail run by Gibson Park at the end of it was classic, and the try seemed to just come out of nowhere. And it was really well done at that stage of the game. And then, of course, in the second half, having gotten the try and gotten the lead back, but then Australia hit back so quickly, to have the self-belief, it's like we never doubted, and we had attacks thwarted between then and the Clarkson try. We had James Ryan under the post knocking the ball on, and to a lot of people, like, oh, that was the chance to win the game. You had Dan Sheehan's try ruled out again with James Ryan involved in apparent block. I do think they got the right call there. They just took too long to make the call. I think they took too long to look at it. They let the conversion be taken, but I do think they got that right. But that could have knocked us back. But we still played with that sense of belief that the try is going to come if we just keep going. And they did get it. And which is why I believe they probably just about deserved to win that game. But listen, it was a good start to the competition anyway. Maximum 5 points. Any win in Southern Hemisphere is good, and we'll see how we go going forward. Okay, listen, we had our usual amount of comments on our Facebook page. Here's a couple of examples. We had Hubert Gallagher, who said, we stood up to a very physical Wallabies side and beat them while missing several players that would have made the 23. And we had Angie Blount, who said, it was a great win away from home after a long old season. Australia aren't mugs at home, and our set piece was all over the place. Any win in those circumstances is a right result. Do you agree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, if you want to join the conversation, just head on over to our Facebook page at The Full-Time Whistle and feel free to leave your thoughts. Okay, listen, we're going to leave it there for now. Many thanks to Kieran for joining us. Looking forward to having you back on again soon.
Yeah, man, pushing 50 caps on the pod, so I look forward to breaking that record hopefully by the end of the year.
Indeed, it won't be long now. And as ever, be sure to stay tuned to Harpin On Rugby and all the socials during the week, including our 80-plus column, where we try to look at the wider rugby world. That posts every Wednesday over on Substack. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.